Welcome everybody to our expert session and part two today about real estate, mostly in Kenya. And welcome again, Grant from the UK and Nissi from South Africa.
Thank you, Johnny.
Morning.
Good to have you here, Nissi. Also, you're my co-host. My name is Johnny. For those who are joining the first time, I am from GrowMyHome. Nissi is a founder from GrowMyHome, and we'll talk about Grant more in a minute. But I'm happy that we can have this part two because part one was exciting. Grant, you are a veteran or an expert, however you want to say that. You've done real estate for a long time, not just in Kenya, but you're from the UK. You've done it in UK and other parts of the world. So thank you very much. And we're excited to hear some more. And you have shared last time already, we talked about Kenya's significance as a country, politically, economically, in East Africa and the whole continent. We talked about the big demand for housing. Also, not just, but also in Kenya, due to the demographics, but also due to demand on luxury, but in general, real estate and housing. And the unfortunate financing gap that is there, that many people who could afford it, but then there's a lot of lack of mortgages, very little mortgages. We talked about solutions that that need to be developed and implemented. Rent to own, there is affordable housing. What does it mean? And we talked, of course, about Grant's book, The Accidental Social Entrepreneur. And Grant, you said clearly last time you're a Christian, and as that when you wrote the book. And one of the endorsements, it reads that she writes, it has to be the most honest and raw account she has ever read of an adventure with God. So that is, I think, a good starter. Adventure is good. Building is an adventure. So if you haven't watched the first episode or the first part, go back and we will link the link to the book, to your book, Grant. But let's go on adventure today. And let's see, today our focus would be to go away from the big concepts we discussed of the macro concepts and go more to the practical, real implementation of building and tap into that experience of yours, Grant, because that's what you learned from the ground up, what we learned and heard last time. So actually, maybe thinking a little bit about the people who actually build themselves. When we think about Kenya, that's our target country at the moment, but there's always principles for everyone in there. And someone themselves or someone who is overseeing someone else. That could be the cousin, which might be difficult, but it could be also a contractor, which could also be difficult, or both could be great. So that is maybe the audience we have in mind. And Grant, you as a quantity surveyor, you mentioned there's hidden costs in construction in Kenya, there is dangers in there. And if you are like me, I'm here from Germany. If you're in the West, I'm not African, obviously. And if you hand over cash to a relative or an unvetted local contractor, that could end easily in disaster and has ended many times in disasters. So you as a professional, Grant, and you're working, but not just professional, you've worked on the ground with many people, we're all normal people. Are there any things you can give to us as a help? How do you de-risk a project from day one? And how can someone learn from that? Yeah, give us some insights, some thoughts, and let's see where it takes us.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Johnny. Unfortunately, what you've opened with is the experience of so many people, is that people living in the diaspora, so Kenyans living in the UK, they've sent money to relatives to either buy land or to build a house, and then that money gets diverted into other things. And of course, it gets diverted not because people are stealing from their relatives, but just because some money comes into their hands and there is a need. There's a medical bill, there's a whatever. So it's not intentional. But so many Kenyans will have experienced that actually trust or relying on their family or their extended family to build for them just doesn't work. I'm not saying it for everyone, but it certainly is the case for many. So how do we de-risk a project? Well, I think the first thing that you need to say is that any construction project has risk. And when I say that, what do I mean? Take, for example, the unpredictability of our weather. Whereas in Kenya, years ago, you knew to the day when the rains were coming. Now the rains come at any time. And so you could start excavations, etc. And then the rains come and you get flooded out. And there's always a solution. But the point that I'm trying to make is that there is, whenever you do a project of this nature, there is risk. But how do you reduce that risk? And of course, what we would like to put forward to anybody that is thinking of building in Kenya and working through with us is our track record. Is that if you said to Hand in Hand or to Bricken, our Kenyan company, our consultancy, would you build a house for us? I think the first thing that we would want to do is actually say, okay, go and speak to this person, go and speak to previous people that we have built for, so that they would testify to the fact that we do what we say we will do. And we also like to pride ourselves that we complete on time and we complete generally under budget. And that is relatively unheard of here in Kenya, to complete on time and under budget. But we work with quantity surveyors who accurately measure. We work with architects who understand the needs of what your building has to be. And we obviously understand construction costs. Now, one of the challenges right now is with the situation around the world, which is impacting oil prices, fuel prices. Fuel has an impact on basically on inflation of everything, but clearly with construction materials as well. So again, if you said to me, Grant, today I'd like you to build me a 3-bedroom bungalow in Embu, I could give you a budget for today, but there is that risk factor of what is actually going to happen to material prices in the near future because of the uncertainty of the oil market. So I believe we can reduce the risk. I believe that we have a track record that can speak on our behalf, but there is always risk in doing any construction project.
Thank you, Grant.
Yeah, I want to throw in a question there, Grant. You've talked about budgeting, which is very important. I guess that refers to the bill of quantities, right? So what something I would like you to speak into, number one, is how detailed or accurate is your bill of quantities? You know, it's not uncommon to see in many parts of Africa where people just build, and then some of the fighting happens because people underestimated the cost of building. So how detailed or how much emphasis do you give to your bill of quantities? Then my second question to that would be the milestone-based capital deployment. How do you ask? Would you ask, say, somebody in the diaspora using your company to build? Would you ask them for 100% of the money upfront or for certain percentages? How do you work that out, and how do you verify what has been done as a mechanism to appropriate delivery?
Yeah, thank you, Nisi. Obviously, as a quantity surveyor, I have quite a biased view about this because I think that all building projects should have a bill of quantities. And because a bill of quantities breaks down in detail exactly what it is that you are going to construct, from digging the foundations in the very first place to the roof tiles, to the type of plumbing fittings, to the type of electrical fittings, etc. And in Kenya, we work with a quantity surveying practice that we worked for 20 years. And the proof is in the pudding, is that they will prepare a bill of quantities at the onset of a project on the drawings. Well, either the drawing is prepared by an architect, or if it is an individual, they will who says, well, I want a 3-bedroom house, I want this size of lounge, I want this size of etc. etc. They will produce a bill of quantities that tells you from day one this is how much stone you're going to need. This is how much, how many electrical fittings you're going to need, etc., etc. And the reason that I have confidence in that comes back to my point that we have undertaken construction projects with them where we have come out under budget at the end. And the reason for that is because they will even include a contingency within their bill of quantities, so that if what you're intimating is that so often people don't actually understand how much material has to go into the project at the beginning, and then it comes out as an extra, we actually would have contingencies so that probably the materials would come out slightly less. And there's a whole psychology involved in that, Nissi. If I tell you that I want to sell you my car for $1,000, and you turn up and I say, oh, I forgot to mention that the tires are extra and it's now actually going to cost you $1,100, you'll be very upset. But if I tell you that I want to sell you my car for $1,100, and when you turn up, I say, oh, actually the tires are included, so you can have it for 1,000. Psychologically, you feel so much better that you've got something cheaper than you expected. And it's the same with construction. Is if you tell somebody it's going to cost more, they're like, well, why didn't you tell me that in the first place? Or were you purposefully underselling it? But if you tell them it's just a little bit, basically you've covered all the bases, and then there's the potential to make a saving because you have contingencies in there. That makes people very happy with me. But with regards to stage payments or milestones, we would always look to effectively probably split the project into about 3, maybe 4 milestones. So there would be the commencement, where you do the excavations, the concrete, the drainage, etc. Then there would be, and so you would split the bill of quantities into 3 or 4 stages or 3 or 4 steps. And so you'd have, okay, so the foundations, that would be step 1. Then you'd have the walls and the roof, that would be step 2. Then you'd have step 3, which could be the plastering and the internal fitting out and the doors, etc. And step 4 could be the finishing off, the painting, etc. So at each stage, even if the person isn't in Kenya, we could then send photographs of the construction, and they can see, okay, so I spent this money, and this is what has been achieved by it, and I can tell from the bill of quantities that this is what they anticipated to spend, and therefore we can see that we're within budget. Now, and therefore we would ask for an upfront deposit of about possibly a third of the project, based on what I've just said on the foundation cost, and then go through with the other phases, and not ask for another tranche of money until the client was completely satisfied that actually their money has been spent well. They have got what they thought they would get as a consequence of spending however many shillings in that first, second, third, fourth phases.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Grant. That is cool. There's good principles in there, and what I hear basically, put in contingency whoever you are, whether you're building or working with someone. Contingency for the normal person is buffer, right? Just leave some space for the unexpected, and don't just cut it too tight. And the other one is I'm hearing, don't pay everything upfront right away, be performance-based, step by step, check. So these are principles I guess we can apply also to those who are not choosing a company. Because I want to ask you, because of course you are, since you are in that business, you are excited about your company, you believe in your company, that's great. Me too, by the way. But would you actually say to someone building out there, don't do it on your own? Would you go that far to say that? Because it's just too much risk. I know you're not blowing your trumpet. We know you for that, and that's why we appreciate that. But like, what would you say? Someone says, "But I don't trust these guys. I want to do it myself." What would you say?
So everybody thinks that contractors and developers make significant profits, and therefore a person doing it themselves can save themselves significant money. I don't dispute that developers and contractors make profit. Obviously, we make profit, otherwise we don't stay in business. But it is not the extremes that people tend to anticipate. And in actual fact, I can give you an example of a project that has gone wrong that I visited just last Sunday here in Kenya, and they basically they were about an hour out of Nairobi, and they built a three-story building. They had a local contractor who undertook the work, who was, very genuine, very friendly, etc. This building was built 20 years ago with reinforced concrete, and has. They were a little bit concerned that the top floor, in their words, was a bit wobbly, and they got a structural engineer to come in, and they discovered that. The reinforcement had not been installed in accordance with the structural engineer, and the cement there hadn't been sufficient cement to sand to stone ratio. The consequence being that the structure was significantly reduced in its structural strength, and they are actually now condemning that building to be
Wow.
demolished. Now,
Wow.
that is a major shock to the client. But the point that I made to them was that a clerk of works is an essential person in any construction project, whether you're building your own or you're getting your relatives to do it, because a clerk of works will stand and make sure that that cement to sand to stone ratio is correct. And that is so crucial. Um, and also that the reinforcement is installed in accordance with the engineer's design. Now, something I probably shouldn't say, but I will say it: engineers over design. They always have done, they always will do, and therefore you can almost make the assumption, well, if we put a little bit less in, it will still stand up, and it probably might. But maybe after 20 years' time, it will fatigue, and it will have to come down. So, unfortunately, for all the structural engineers do tend to over design, and an earthquake could take place and your building would still stand. It is my advice to anybody that they should always adhere to what the structural engineer has designed. Of course, somebody building a rural home in Kenya, they won't even have a structural design. They'll just go, okay, I think we'll put this concrete in here, and that looks the right color. That'll be fine. So it can be done, and it can be done very nicely. But also, you talk about de-risking. To my mind, you are really growing the risk. That's the better word, because of the number of things that can go wrong. And the point of this building that I went to see, they said, but we were here and we saw what they were doing. And I said, yes, but did you actually watch them make the concrete and watch the ratio of cement to sand to stone? And if you did you know what you're watching anyway? And obviously, you can probably guess what the answer to that was. So the things that can go, and of course, now that structure is there, the cost to demolish it is going to be significant, and you've got absolutely nothing left. So the risk factor is high. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it's risky.
I think before Johnny goes to his next questions, I think, Grant, you've said something very important that needs to be underlined. Africans need to learn to think that low quality is a risk and that it might show up in time. So when you're cutting corners or thinking about not doing what the engineer designed, I remember a project we did somewhere in Africa, and one of the contractors actually phoned me frantically and said, "Hey, there's something wrong with your lead engineer. He's using too much material." And what was the lead engineer doing? He was using the material that was in the structural engineer's design, and the contractor thinks it's a waste, and that the contractor is not thinking 20 years ahead. So I like
Really.
that point. Yeah, quality saves you from the long-term loss. So I think that's something we need to underline as we are developing or talking to people who want to develop in Africa.
And I think to underline that, Nissi, is that when they finished the project and they handed it over to the client, it looked beautiful.
That's
It
right.
wasn't
That's
cracking
right.
at that time. The
That's
paint
right.
was all done lovely. The
That's
columns
right.
were straight. The ceilings were flat. Everything looked lovely. It doesn't
Mm,
appear on day one. It only appears as time goes on. And as I walked around the building, you could see hairline cracks in all the beams, which
mm,
demonstrated. So the cracks came down the side of the beams and under the beams.
mm,
And what that tells you is that the beam was completely under stress and was actually on the move because it wasn't built to the design of the structural engineer.
mm.
Well, thank you. You talked about construction material, and I just want to, you also mentioned at the moment fuel has gone up, and it's for everyone quite a concern. And is there anything how can we manage that? Should we pile up now for the everything we can for building if we're building right now, or any advice there?
Well, of course, the theory is that because of the world situation and the challenges that are going on in the world, the oil prices have increased. The theory is that once everything calms down, is the oil prices will reduce, and therefore the prices will come back down again because fuel will be cheaper, and therefore logistics is cheaper, and therefore moving of materials will be cheaper, and the manufacturing of materials is cheaper. But unfortunately, we also know that quite often when prices go up, it almost takes a miracle to bring them back down again.
That's right.
So, so to be fair, in Kenya during the COVID period, prices did go up, and they did come back down, particularly cement and steel, because cement and steel, you may be aware, is a world price. It is the same price throughout the world. It's a universal price. And that they all, cement and steel particularly, increased during that period, and they did come back down. So maybe I'm being a little bit unfair to say that if inflation comes and steel and cement and other materials as well go up, they won't come back down. But that is the challenge. And of course, we don't actually know today what the impact of what is taking place in the world is going to have. So, in answer to your question, how can you protect against it? Um, I think we're just living in a vulnerable time, Johnny,
Hmm.
and I'm not sure. I wouldn't even advise to go out and buy as the prices are going up to buy it all now to stop the potential increase next month or next year because it could come down and you might find that actually you've overpaid
Hmm.
um, for your materials. So we're just in a vulnerable space right now.
That's true. The good thing is, and I like this for all of us, because of our worldview and our faith, we have hope always. So that's why I always like
Mm,
there is risks, but risk should not keep us from living and should not keep us from taking these risks. They should be calculated risks, I would say. And
mm,
so before we leave that one, I just want to, if I want to build now, there's quite a few experts you need when you build a house. What is the non-negotiable when I start? Before I start, I think you might have mentioned it already, but like, what is the thing I should not? I want to build, and you said this is the first two steps. Do not cut the corner there.
So the what some people will do is they will have no architect involved, no structural engineer involved. They have seen their neighbor build houses and they think that they can do it equally as well. In my view, you should always have a structural engineer. And therefore, if you have a structural engineer, the structural engineer can't design a structure if he doesn't have a drawing to design. So, an architect to give an overall plan of what you're trying to achieve. And the biggest challenge is what your spans are. What do I mean by that? Are the open spaces. If you want to have a lounge that doesn't have a column in the middle of it, etc., then you have to span it and you have to span it with a beam. And if you're going to span a long distance so that you have a clear area, then you have to design that structural beam. So, to my mind, essential is an architect and a structural engineer. We've already touched on the quantity surveyor. The quantity surveyor isn't essential, but the quantity surveyor certainly can, in my opinion, working with us, can give you peace of mind that when you say this project is going to cost $100,000, that actually it will cost $100,000, or 99,000 or 101, but it won't be 200,000. So I wouldn't classify a quantity surveyor as essential, but certainly advisable. And then the fourth discipline is the mechanical and electrical engineer. For a house, I wouldn't say that's necessarily essential. A mechanical electrical engineer is significantly important for an office development, etc., where you're running a core of electrics and plumbing particularly. But for a house, I would advise it, but I wouldn't say it was your number one priority.
Grant, good point you've made about those key things. Now, one of the reasons Africans, if you're building in the UK or in Germany, where John is sitting, you go to the bank and you get a bond that covers the cost of building. So the chances of bypassing anything is lower because you've got the full amount covered. For many African people or many people investing in Africa, that might not be the case. And so the pressure to bypass some non-essentials becomes higher. It's like, hey, the structural engineer costs more. Can't I just get a contractor who has experience or stuff like that? So how do you balance that? People are always trying to do it cheaper because they want to be able to afford it. How do you manage that? What do you say to somebody that has that kind of financial constraints who wants to build? Do you build smaller? Do you build in phases? Or do you just stop building?
My comment on that is you are just opening yourself up to massive risk. And as I said, you can. Well, so this building that I was looking at two weeks ago here in Kenya, I said it is absolutely essential that you have a full-time clerk of works who is making sure that it is being built in accordance with the drawings, and therefore that the strength, particularly of concrete, is being adhered to. But the challenge for a clerk of works is that is because you can save so much money by cutting corners, i.e. by putting in less reinforcement or by using less cement, then clerk of works are open to corruption, because the client can say, well, okay, I can save myself $1,000 on the cement and $2,000 on the steel. So if I just pay the clerk of works $500, he's very happy, and he turns a blind eye to the fact that we've got less steel and we've got less cement strength in the project. Now, of course, there is one way to protect yourself with regards to concrete strength, and that is to do for every concrete that you place, you do a test cube, which is sent off to a lab and is then tested to see that it is the right strength. But very few people, retail people, as I classify people who build their own house, would go down that road. But it is a road that could be done, is that they insist that test cubes are taken from when you place the foundations, when you do the slab, etc. But if you're not overseeing it, there's nothing to say that you don't make the cube out of something different to what you actually put in the ground. So it just, particularly if you're in the diaspora and you're living 4,000 miles away, how on earth can you be certain that when you come home to the beautiful house that you've spent X thousands of dollars or millions of shillings to build, is that when in your retirement, you don't find that actually it's collapsing around your head? So at the point of your life where you should just be taking things easy and relaxing and enjoying, God's creation, suddenly you're having to rebuild your house. So if you don't take these steps, and I fully appreciate when I was talking last week, I said, you must employ a clerk of works. And they said, but a clerk of works will cost 150,000 shillings a month. And I said, yes, but you're about to knock a 3-story building down because you didn't. So it's a bitter pill to swallow, but to my mind, it's essential.
How would you recommend leveraging on technology? So what if we had surveillance cameras for people in the diaspora? We have Wi-Fi, we have cheap cameras today. People could always know that they are under watch. Would that help?
I think that would help. I think that, and in actual fact, on our sites, we have CCTV, particularly to oversee deliveries. So a lorry is delivering 1,000 stones. Are 1,000 stones actually unloaded onto your site? So I think the combination of technology and physical representation are important. I'm not sure that you can completely replace it. I think it's almost a backup. But I'll be honest with you, that's not my expertise, and it's not something that I have particularly looked into. But I do know how that we use it in order to enhance what we do. But we haven't actually done away with at this time in reducing our dependency on a physical clerk of works.
Thank you very much. There was many valuable points for those who are self-building or want to build, or even in engaging a contractor, to what to watch out for. You talked a lot about partnership, and even what you said, that's not my expertise. That's a great strength to know what is not our expertise, because we are never self-sufficient in something. We need partners to work with, and we as GrowMyHome are one of your partners, or you're one of our partners, however you want to say that. And I just want to say that we offer that with partners, that we offer for people land, we offer houses, we offer modular houses, the process. We want to help people to manage that important step. I mean, how often do you build a house in another country, or get another house built in another country? But you in your book dedicated a whole chapter, Grant, to how to choose your people. And it even gets down as practical as tick lists you can tick off, with even prioritized things you should look at. So that means you take that very serious, and we can hear that. You can, and I believe that technology is great. It can never fully replace, or shouldn't replace, trust and proven relationships. So here comes maybe a bit of an interesting point. You're partnering with us. In light of all what you said, why would you recommend anybody listening or watching to work with GrowMyHome?
So that's not a particularly difficult question to answer. I find that it is very easy to kiss a lot of frogs. What I mean by that is that on your first meeting, you can all be speaking the same language. You can be coming from the same ethic. You can be telling the same story. And quite often that camouflage can continue for some time, but eventually you will see the true purpose and vision of people that you are working with, and quite often it doesn't matter if you say, "Oh, I'm a Christian." In that case, you can be trusted. Unfortunately, I sadly have to tell you from my experience that isn't an automatic consequence. And so, why would I recommend GrowMyHome? Let me divert into a different story, but I'll come back. Is that we run an NGO in Kenya and Uganda, and our philosophy right from day one was twofold. One was we would only work with indigenous Christians who had already made a response to poverty in their area. And the reason that we made that statement was that we didn't want to come in and start something. And therefore, that was the instigation of the outsider. Clearly, a Kenyan understands the challenges of Kenya far better than an outsider from the UK. So our philosophy was that we would always work with indigenous, so Kenyan Christians, as opposed to missionaries, where they were already making a response to poverty in their community. And number two was that we would walk with somebody for 2 years before, in actual fact, we would commit any financial support to the programs that they did, because we considered that what going back to where I started, that in 2 years, if you're not true, it'll come to the surface.
Mhm.
And so we've walked with Grow My Home for I think it must be about 5 years that we have been talking together. We first met on a webinar in South Africa through Patrick, and then we have talked. And in actual fact, we haven't done a huge amount. And the fact that we haven't done a huge amount is a strength, because that means that we're committed to each other to have a vision that we are going to do a huge amount. And then the other side to the relationship and the trust is that Johnny, you came and stayed in my place. And when a person stays in your place, that does actually tell you quite a lot about the person, about how your conversation goes, about what you talk about who you actually went to, who I facilitated for you to go and see, the people that you're seeing, etc., etc. So I would have no hesitation in recommending Grow My Home, because I believe, in my experience, having walked with you for, let's say it's 4 or 5 years, that you are people that have a desire to facilitate lower income people into having imaginative ways of both investing and of owning an asset. And I'm comfortable to say that publicly, because I've understood as we have spoken. And I've worked with other groups and investors, and slowly you begin to see that profit is their only goal. Profit is essential. We have to, if we are in commercial business, profit is essential. But the whole point of my book, which you've very kindly referred to on 2 or 3 occasions, is that we should be looking to achieve more than one financial bottom line of social impact, of facilitating other people into a world which is purely commercially driven, and therefore prevents access to lower income people into either investment or home ownership. And therefore, as business leaders, we have the responsibility to actually lead our business in a way that can make a difference in a person's life, rather than on reflection at the end of the relationship with a client, they turn around and go, well, it may Grow My Home or Hand in Hand a lot of money, but I'm left renting a building that's falling down. That's a little bit extreme.
Thank you very much, Grant. John is very good at asking very interesting questions. That's a very interesting question. But I have a question to that. But first of all, I just want to say thank you for that recommendation. We are Christians, we give the glory back to God. In today's business world, it's very difficult to sustain. Sometimes you mean very well, but it's very difficult to sustain well-meaning. So we're happy to hear that. But I think my question then is, from what all you've said, are you now saying that I have free guests, free board and stay if I visit you in the UK?
100%.
Right.
My pitch to Johnny, because when we first met, Johnny was living in South Africa, and then he moved back to Germany. And I said to Johnny, you're £100 away from me. Stansted Airport is round the corner. I said, all you need to do is find £100. And Johnny, you can testify as to whether it costs you any more to come and stay with me. And that same invitation goes to you, Nisi, except that your flight is more than £100 away.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Grant. I mean, in order to not get this too personal, although I personally enjoy it, and yes, I have stayed in your home and I really enjoyed being there, and it really tells you something. So I agree. There's always so many principles we can take out of these conversations. After your answer, Grant, if we had been in church, I would have said amen and we would have sung a song, and it would have been perfect. But we're in a podcast or in an interview, so let me bring it back home. But the exciting thing is we actually are not finishing here. We have a partnership and we decide, and that's actually exciting for everyone listening and watching. We have decided to start a podcast about real estate in our partnership, Grow My Home, together with Grant and his people he knows and experts from his fields. So we will start that, and it will cover topics like fractional ownership, social investment, modular housing, cross-cultural investment, importance of quality. We talked about that, and we'll have this kind of conversation. And so if you're interested, keep an eye on this channel. We will communicate it too, and we will have another podcast, hopefully beneficial to those watching. And of course, you will always get some snippets and stories from Grant's book and good advice, which we gladly take. So any last word today, Grant, from you before we end the session?
Only to say that I really enjoy these sessions. I enjoy the interaction between the three of us, and I just hope that we come over as genuine people. I actually posted on my LinkedIn. I've been in business in Kenya for 28 years, and I have a business partner, Peter Njero, who I've been in partnership with for 26 years. And I had dinner with him last Wednesday. And I posted on LinkedIn a photograph of him and I said, I have been in business with this man of integrity for 26 years. And the comments that I got on that and was quite interesting was because, in a sense, people who recognize integrity have to have integrity. And therefore, in one sense, I was almost blowing my own trumpet that Peter wouldn't have been in business with me if also I wasn't a person of integrity. And I would just like to think that whenever I do a presentation, people say, and the book which Johnny you've referred to, come over as honesty. And speaking from the heart. And that's what I'd like people to take away, that we speak honestly and from the heart, because we genuinely want to make a difference.
Thank you so much. Nothing else to add besides that I will put the links down in the sections. There will be links to the book. There will be links to subscribe to our channel if you want to. There will be probably the link to the podcast. So thanks again, Nissi, for your time. Thanks again, Grant. And hopefully we see each other soon again. And up until then, goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.